When I'm with my girl, she be rockin' that Wilma Flintstone. When it's time to rock the bed, then I get my bread on. What's up, my wizards? Dev from SBMTG. Normally we have decks. Today we have spoilers. The first big day of spoilers from the mothership at Wizards of the Coast came in the wee hours of the morning last night. We got a bunch of them. Today, I'm just going to go over my sort of top 10. The 10 best spoiler cards that I've seen, or at least the ones I'm most excited about so far. Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about the cards that I'm most excited about first, and especially this one. This is Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. Cool name. Instantly one of the best cards in Standard, by my estimation. This works really, really well with Hangerback Walker, first of all. So, slots into Abzan, there's that. It also slots into Aristocrats really well, allowing you to get small creatures you can sacrifice easily, or make your smaller dudes bigger. And that deck plays Hangerback Walker too, and sometimes Den Protector. And you can make the Den Protector bigger, rendering him unblockable sometimes. Just Nissa. And it might see play in the green ramp decks that we see, the Eldrazi decks and stuff. Could see play in those. All kinds of things. This might be the thing that Jund needs to push it over the top. I think Jund just needs one or two really good pieces to be a real deck in Standard. Same thing goes with Naya, which this obviously slots into as well. Another thing about Nissa is that Hardened Scales is still legal in the format until Shadows of Innistrad comes out. Hardened Scale. So you neg to her and everything gets 2 counters. That's what? So just so many. Oh, and one more thing I want to talk about before I move on. Bant, even. All these 3-color combinations. Bant could be really good with this, giving you, creatures to block with every single turn and protect your Nissa or yourself. That's not bad. And eventually you'll be able to ultimate for a huge Sphinx's Revelation. You'll get 7, 8, 10 even off of this when you ultimate her. That's insanity for a control deck. So just everything she does is insanely relevant. All at the cost of 3 mana. She'll be the cheapest Planeswalker in Standard. And yeah, people are comparing her just because of the cost to Liliana of the Veil. I don't really see that at all. But as far as our current Standard meta, this card is the perfect thing that slots into a million different decks. So yeah, definitely going to see play. Definitely going to be an important chase card from this set. And just having Nissa means the set probably won't suck. But there's plenty of other cards that make us think that. Next, I want to talk about Chandra, Flamecaller. I really, really want to be disappointed by this, But, upon closer inspection, all the stuff she does is fairly relevant, It's just 6 mana Planeswalker. You gotta get over that. And I know that I'm inviting sort of comparisons to Elspeth there, which was a very, very good 6 mana Planeswalker. But I really don't think there's any comparison between this and Elspeth. Elspeth killed all the biggest guys, and she could do that the turn she hit the board. And she created up to 3 blockers. Or attackers if you need them to be, but mostly blockers in those decks. And Elspeth is just, in my opinion, just a way better Planeswalker. But this does still have applications. I was just talking about Jund and Naya. This could go into those really well. Or again, the green-red Eldrazi, the ramp decks we see in the format. This could see play. For the next few months until Shadows of Innistrad comes out, it's going to be really, really good with Delve. Fuels Delve very well. And honestly, the 0 ability is probably the best reason to play the card. That looks really, really good to me. Just straight up wheel and draw a card on top of all the other cards you draw there. I do think her ultimate is very good. It is her way of protecting herself. She does have a way. Although at 6 mana, we'll have to see how relevant it is. Bye, I love you. But in any case, we'll have to see how relevant that is, because 6 mana is, again, just an awful lot. But everything she does is good, and I really like her +1's interaction with Omnath. I could see maybe that again in the green-red ramp decks, but it's either don't block my guys and take 6, or block and kill my guys and take 6. That's pretty cool, but I don't know how important that will be. But she can win the game for you. She has a way of doing that. She'll draw you cards. That's pretty cool. And she can bust up creatures. She's a board wipe. So everything she does, pretty awesome. We'll have to see if it's worth 6 mana. Next, I want to talk about Seagate Ruins. This is sort of a rough translation. We don't have the card in English yet, but this is what the card does right there on the screen. This could be one of the best cards in the set. We haven't even seen the entire set yet at all, not even close. But this card is so incredibly powerful that I could see it being one of the chase rares alongside Nissa. It's weird that it's not mythic. People are already talking about it in Modern and even Legacy. It invites comparisons to Library of Alexandria, one of the best Magic cards of all time, and you can stack those triggers, or those abilities. If you don't have any cards in your hand, you got more than one of these out, just stack the activations, you can draw more cards. That's pretty cool too. Could go in a lot of different things, but we'll have to see how well it slots in. This is a card that I think is going to see a lot of testing in this format, but we'll have to see Standard. But we'll have to see where exactly it goes. As far as Modern goes, I could see Affinity maybe, or even Tron. Tron could be a good call playing this card. But in Standard, obviously, Esper, we'll try this card out. Mid-range decks, we'll try this card out. Probably at just a one of. But I could see it being good in other stuff too. But in Standard, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not totally sure, but the card just looks so traditionally powerful that it could be one of the best cards in the whole set. Number 4 is Crush of Tentacles, which I'm cheating. It came out like 2 days ago, you know, but I still haven't talked about it. Haven't talked about the Surge mechanic. This card, in and of itself, this card, not the Surge mechanic, but this card, I think might see a great deal of play in the Noyandar Ascendancy combo deck for the next 2 or 3 months while it's still legal in Standard before Shadows of Innistrad comes out. The card looks obviously really good for that, but just in your traditional control decks, the card is both board wipe and a win condition. 2 things that a control deck is known for. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? Good to see you. 2 things a control deck absolutely has to have. I've been working on mono blue control for a while, and this could go really well in there, especially in like a budget build. I don't think the card's going to get like incredibly expensive. Now, as far as the Surge mechanic goes, I'm really excited to see what they do with it. It looks like a kind of ability that will have one extremely playable card is somewhere in the set. I'm not saying that that Crush of Tentacles isn't, that sounds like hentai by the way, but I'm not saying that Crush of Tentacles is a bad card. We'll probably see some play, especially in a sort of testing phase after the set comes out. Could see a lot of play in the Ascendancy combo deck, yes. But I think there will probably be a card with a very cheap Surge cost that you can probably get off at least somewhat easily without having to jump through too many hoops. So I could see Surge being a very important mechanic. It depends on what they did with it. But I like this card just in that one deck really, but maybe even in control, you know, getting an 8/8 is like an insane win condition. Like, you can play no creatures in your control deck and still have this as a win condition. And a board wipe. I'll say that again. This card could be good. Next card here is Kozilek's Return. Yet another sort of board wipe effect. I'm starting to fall in love with this card, to be honest with you. Just imagine playing a huge Eldrazi and wiping the board at the same time. That's awesome. You don't even have to resolve the Eldrazi, and this resolves before the Eldrazi, which could be important. But honestly, you can wipe the board twice, like at instant speed too, like the first time. That's really, really good. We already see some of these cards. Radiant Flames probably plays a lot better in most decks than this card does, but in the Eldrazi decks, this is awesome. And again, instant speed, which is just perfect on something like this. Being able to wipe the board of small aggro dudes early on in the game in these ramp decks, you know, these Eldrazi decks, could be quite relevant. And being able to just completely wipe the board of mid-range creatures, even things as big as the Rhino, mid-game, as you play a huge threat, could be awesome. I mean, a lot of times when like an Ulamog comes down against aggro and mid-range, that'll cinch up the game. That goes way above anything that any deck does. That'll already cinch up the game. Imagine wiping the board when you do it. That just really closes things out. And I think that after, you know, especially post-boards, you could side out a couple of Ugins in those decks, put this in against, you know, aggro or even mid-range decks that play smaller creatures like Abzan and stuff. So I can definitely see this seeing play at least in sideboards, but just everything it does is super powerful. Just wipe the board twice. One of the times you wipe the board of huge dudes for free. Yes. Next card I want to talk about is World Breaker. I'm not really sure how important the card's going to be, but I did think it was noteworthy. You know, it's reusable, recyclable. You can't get rid of it unless you exile it. That's pretty cool. Busts. Probably important, permanent every time it comes into play. Even if you just hit a land, that's probably good, especially considering they're already shaping up to be a lot of important lands that people are probably just going to play a 1 or 2 of. So that could be good right there. Busting an enchantment is probably fine, you know, Silkraft, Stasis Snare, for example. So I could see the card being okay, especially after Ugin rotates. I could see this being in the 7 slot over Ugin, you know, after he rotates. But until he does rotate, I don't think this card's going to see much play. We'll have to wait and see. It's at least interesting. This right here is Kalitas. I wanted to talk about him just because I think he's noteworthy as a commander, perhaps. Could be a really fun commander, but even in Standard, my initial inclination was to say this will never see play in Standard. It's just not good enough. But honestly, you know, you play him in the next turn, you sack a guy, you've got yourself a 5/6 lifelinker right there. It's pretty good, right? So maybe, but I'm still just not really seeing it. Although if you sacrifice 2 guys, you have like a 7/8 lifelink dude, so that's one thing. But I'm just not seeing it. And mostly I think the application will be as a very fun commander to build around. I just want to sort of briefly talk about Crumbling Vestige. It's really interesting, right? I think it actually could be good as a budget option for some, 3, maybe even 4 color decks. And obviously, the 3 and 4 color Eldrazi decks, it may go in there, but mostly as a budget option. I really just like the card because I have wanted it for like 15 years. Like, I used to sit in class all day and design cards and stuff. I just have notebooks full of designed cards from the old days. And this is a card that I designed in like the 8th or 9th grade. So like 15 years of my life I've been wanting this card. So I guess thanks, Wizards. I'm still holding out for the comes into play tapped land with flash that only produces colorless mana. But that's probably broken. A land with flash, even if it comes into play tapped and produces colorless mana, is probably still broken. But you at least gave me this land, and I appreciate you for that. Next, I'm going to talk about the expeditions for just a second. And I know this is like the 9th card out of 10 that I'm talked about here, or the 9th thing that I've talked about. But don't think that means that they're like irrelevant or anything. These probably could have been like the 2nd or 3rd thing I talked about. There's just so many amazing expeditions in this thing. We finally got filter lands like we've been wanting, so that's awesome right there. We get Ancient Tomb, Strip Mine, and Waste freaking Land right here. And if the Battle for Zendikar expeditions have taught us anything, it's that these might be seeded in quite a lot and thus drop in value very, very quickly. You might be able to get these on the cheap after the set gets opened a lot, which with this many expeditions, and with Nissa in the set, and with Seagate Ruins, if that ends up being a good thing, that's all we've seen so far. This could be a set that gets opened an awful lot, driving down the prices of the cards. So these could really help out modern players trying to get in there on a budget, either by pulling the cards, which is entirely possible, or by just driving down the prices of existing versions of the cards. That could happen too. So, and just all these are ridiculous. And Wasteland, you guys. Finally, I just wanted to touch on Sphinx of the final word. It's appropriate final word. That's cute. Anyway, I do think this might see sideboard play in control against the mirror match. I could see that happening. Aside from that, I really don't think that it's great or anything. A flying hexproof 5/5 is good just because of the hexproof, but 7 mana is awfully prohibitive. And I've thought about maybe using in the green-blue Eldrazi deck, which I think gets some really good pieces, including Crush of Tentacles. I think that could be a good piece for green-blue Eldrazi, which is already a good deck. It's got Part the Water Veil. That's cool. But in any case, I think this might be a good piece for that, but probably not at the end of the day. I just think the deck already has a lot of good options besides this, but could be a decent sideboard one-up for some decks. That's all I've got for now. It was my top 10 spoilers of official day 1 of lots of spoilers. That means we're going to start getting them very, very soon. The set releases in like mid-January is when pre-release happens, so it won't be that long. We're just about a month out, which is when we usually start getting spoilers. So stay tuned with us. Not only will we have awesome decks coming up, a lot of them, but I'm going to start building decks with these cards. I always do that, and we'll get to talking about some more spoilers too. So sub if you're new or if you haven't done that yet, and please hit the thumbs up button. It takes like 2 seconds, helps me out a lot, and just makes me feel good. I'm Dev from SBMTG. This is Ziggy. That was Igby. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.